Echo is a new show in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and is now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu. And this continues off of where we left in Hawkeye, which was where Maya Lopez had just shot Wilson Fisk, also obviously known as the Kingpin. And now she's on the run. She's trying to figure out what comes next. Not quite sure what happens, but also trying to find a way to reconnect with her family, who she has lost out on over the years due to a lot of different things happening. And that eventually leads her back to her hometown of Tamaha, where she reconnects with them, but also her ancestral roots. At the same time, she also has to deal with the fact that Fisk's not far behind, and, he is very much still kicking. And now that we have our show. For all intents and purposes, this is the first adult offering from Disney's side of the MCU. Granted, the Netflix shows had already done that for a lot of years now, but now you can officially have the Disney Plus stamp on it saying TVMA. Then this show is very much in that tonal space. It's trying to be more like those shows rather than something that you've seen from the recent Disney Plus offerings, which is a nice thing to revisit because with that rating boost, you can kind of go further when it comes to a few things, not just the violence, but also the storytelling in general. And I can say for a fact that Echo does do a lot of that. Let me get the positives out of the way because there is a lot to enjoy in Echo. For one, everybody's great in it. Alaqua Cox is incredible. She is excellent as an actress, and I think what she does over here, especially with the fact that she does have no dialogue. I mean, it's all ASL and it's all conveyed in very powerful ways. She does an excellent job here, especially in the action sequences, getting the physical and emotional sides of Maya very, very well on screen. I think she does a better job here than she did in Hawkeye, where I felt like things were sidelined tonally pretty often. I enjoyed Hawkeye, but one of the things that I did think was hindering that show at times was a larger, emphasis on what it could have been, like especially a much darker show because that's what the background is set up. Echo very much leans into that and it gives some time to its characters, which is also really, really great. The supporting cast, which is made up of Vincent D'Onofrio, Tantu Cardinal, Devery Jacobs, etc., they're all really, really great as well, and all of them really bring their A game. Kingpin is very much on, the adult scale that you expect him to be in this series. And there is a good enough, center around him that you definitely get to see a lot more of Vincent D'Onofrio being like he was in the Netflix series. The action is definitely more violent and brutal. There's some really great stuff, especially in the first episode. There's this one take sequence that happens of sorts, which is really, really great. As you probably know, Daredevil universe one takes are kind of a thing that are, rooted in pop culture, and that's one thing that's over here as well. Daredevil is in the show. This is also something that I can say, but I will temper expectations because if you're going into this expecting it to be the Daredevil show, this is not that. You're getting a Daredevil show. It's called Daredevil Born Again. You can wait for that show. That's where you'll get your Daredevil content. You're not gonna get that here. You're gonna get him for not a lot of time, is all I'll say about that. There are two plot lines going on in Echo. One is regarding the MCU storyline, which is what Maya is dealing with and also having to deal with Fisk. And then there's also the storyline about her being a member of the Choctaw Nation and essentially exploring her roots and, getting to know her ancestral line. And you get to see a lot of sequences where you go back and you see some of the prominent members of her family tree. For me, the latter was easily the highlight of the entire show. And we spent a lot of time with that stuff. There are a few standout sequences that take place with some of our ancestors, and they are wonderfully done. They're really well directed as well. Episode 2 in particular has this really, really great moment where there is a match going on, this game going on. I'll just leave it at that. Fantastic scene, and the representation that you get of that culture in here is phenomenal. That is such an awesome storyline that I almost wish that was the entire show. It's not that the MCU storyline is not good by any means. It's fun, but I was much more invested in what was going on with Maya's family roots and all of that stuff, and I thought that was even more interesting. And whenever the show went into that, I was even more hooked than all the stuff that was going on post Hawkeye, and trying to fix up some of those things that were caused at the end of that show. But nonetheless, I thought most of the storytelling was good. Where it does suffer, though, is when it comes to its pacing and structure. I do feel it could have used at least one more episode, at least 6 episodes, to really round it off. I think because of that, it does suffer when it comes to letting some stuff really, really breathe, especially in the later episodes. Because there are some things that do feel like they conclude a little quicker than they should. Some things that I really do think get developed a lot, but others do not as a result of that. And it does result in a bit of a mix match when it comes to all of those plot elements. And in fact, that's where I kind of attribute the Choctaw storyline a lot more, because that feels a lot more complete than the other stuff, which is dealing with post Hawkeye. Because that stuff I feel like is a little quicker and a little easier to deal with than I feel like the other storyline which is going on. In that way, you could say the show does what it needs to, because it is first and foremost about that familial side of it. In that way, the show does succeed in what it's supposed to do. But since there is that other side of it, I do feel like that does suffer a bit. That being said, there is another show coming with Daredevil and with Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin returning. So there is the next thing. So you could talk about, the fact that, well, there's more coming. That could be the case. But at the same time, I just feel like, when we're talking about this show, it's important to mention that that does suffer. And it does hinder the show quite a bit as a result of that. That said, I did enjoy Echo. I did have a very good time watching it. I thought the episodes were really, really fun and very entertaining. And they did work for the most part very, very much. I think there were some things that could have worked a little bit better, and I think it could have been structured and paced a lot better. But overall, I did have a solid time with it. I do think it's better than a major chunk of the stuff that came out last year, and I think it's definitely one of the best, things that they've done in terms of recent offerings. But at the same time, it's not as good as the earlier stuff that Netflix was doing with Daredevil and all that. I would advise not really looking at it that way, though, because this is not the same thing. They're doing their own thing. Netflix did its own thing. This is their first, like I said, this is Disney's first foray into this. And then there's Deadpool 3 coming up, which is also going to be adult. So I think they're trying to figure out how to do this now. So let's consider this the first experiment. Is it a successful experiment? For the most part, I would say, yeah, it does work out pretty well. It could have been a lot better, but I think it's a fairly solid time nonetheless. I'm gonna give Echo a B+. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. And if you like this, please do subscribe. And I will see you guys in the movies, and, very happy streaming to you all.